Hello, hello again. My name is Baratunde Thurston, and I am your host with the most, your MC with the Wi-Fi. I don't know why I said Wi-Fi. I was trying to rhyme, and that's not really the thing that I do. I'm a writer, I'm an activist, I'm a comedian, and mostly I'm honored to be gathered here today with such a powerful network of people all over the world, artists, activists, indigenous leaders, youth climate activists, folks who are trying to make a difference, encouraging us to just look up as we face what can be an impending crisis, but turn it into a much bigger opportunity to renew not just our energy sources, but our spirit as people. If you're just tuning in, please check out nomoredirtybanks.com. It's real action that you can take and encourage those in your network to take to defund the destruction of our only home planet. Right now, we are going to focus our attention on a member of society that many of us have been paying a lot more attention to lately, the nation of Ukraine. I'd like to welcome with me here right now, Svitlana Romanko. Come on down, join me on this screen. Svitlana is a Ukrainian climate activist. How are you right now, Svitlana? First of all, just acknowledging you. My heart's with you. How are you feeling in this very moment?
Yeah, thank you so much, Baratunde, and everyone who is watching. I know and feel this greatest global solidarity, and thank you so much for your thoughts that you are sending us across the globe. And currently, I am so happy to be here and to share our thoughts about this fossil-fueled war in Ukraine and the climate crisis. I'm here because I don't want to see the world respond to this war by doubling down on fossil fuels, the same that have led us to this crisis moment. I want the fossil fuel era and this war to be ended once and forever, and for everyone on this planet, in Yemen or in some other country. I appreciate that we can put our joint effort and end the wars everywhere. And going back to Ukrainian reality, it's completely unsafe. And right now, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians are under constant and heavy fire and bombardment without food, water, electricity, or basic human rights, or sanitation, or communication in the eastern, central, and southern Ukraine. We wake up to explosions. That's become like a new normal, but I don't want it to be normal. We should not take this as our new reality, and we should always resist. And we are terrorized by all day and night air alarms and these missiles and shellings from Russia side, and Russian troops are bombarding maternity hospitals, theaters where 1,000 people was hiding in a basement, in a bomb shelter, houses and safety corridors, and killing civilians, children and families on the roads, in their homes and in hospitals. And many of our cities in the eastern part have been entirely destroyed. And this will cost us much to rebuild it, and morally and ethically, and not just financially. And 10 million people have been internally displaced to the west from the east, but we welcome them in our houses because they are Ukrainians who just lost everything with this horrific war. And this is a devastating illegal invasion and a humanitarian catastrophe, which share the same roots with the climate crisis. And I would like to name them loudly, sound and loud. It's the fossil fuels. And
Svitlana, let me pause you there, because so much of what we are hearing through media is certainly in the Western context. This is an unjust war. This is an illegal war. This is a land grab. But the rationale for it, we've not been told a story of how this connects to fossil fuels very much at all. We've been told a story that this is about NATO expansion and Vladimir Putin's delusion of restoring the Russian Empire and many other reasons, which may be in part true. But can you draw that connection to us? You called it a fossil fuel war. You called this Putin's oil war. What's the connection between the climate crisis, fossil fuels, and what your nation's going through right now?
Yeah, thanks, Baratunde. That's an essential question to speak about for us where we are now. And the connections between those are very explicit. And Russian propaganda will never tell us or tell others the truth about how, for decades, the big Western oil companies courted Putin and helped him exploit Russia's vast reserves. And supported by many banks in Western countries, they have poured billions into Putin's war chest, and turn the blind eye to his violent expansion to obtain access to even more fossil fuel reserves. And saying so, I just want to say that financial institutions can't claim to be taking a moral stance by exiting Russian securities when they've been almost forced to do so. All of these oil companies and investors aided and abetted Putin's rise to power with decades of financing Russian fossil fuels, which has resulted in the shocking invasion of my country, of Ukraine. And actually, the last point I would be making in this regard is the sentiment has turned, and it won't stop at Russian assets only. It's not that time. It's time when we are making a history, and the history demands nothing less. The energy system is global, and it's the fossil fuels that are toxic. As long as we're addicted to fossil fuels, we'll continue to empower regimes that oppress the citizens, initiate deadly conflicts, and pollute and deprive local communities. And as Ukrainians, we are remaking our history in these tragic but also remarkable days through brave acts of resistance and mutual support. And the world can see every day the heroic actions of ordinary people who are fighting for their communities, for our families and our country. And we are committed to the defense of the vulnerable and the cause of justice, how the world is to be committed about the climate crisis and the most vulnerable who are suffering the most in their communities. And there was a powerful testimony of our indigenous leaders today, earlier today, was to make the point that this is our natural resources, this is our lands, and we decide that these resources should stay in the ground, and we should non-proliferate. We should proliferate from fossil fuels once and forever. And actually, saying so, I just wanted to remind us one of mind-capturing moments from the Don't Look Up movie, which captured my attention especially. It's the launch of these big aircrafts. I don't want to say that they're like rockets or something, aircrafts to destroy the comet for the first time. And what an obscure irony is in these big shots of the happy faces with the great hope that another destruction will do a good deed, save humanity from imminent death. This won't happen. Another destruction won't bring us peace, and we should start to learn and have a willpower of ending fossil fuels one and forever.
And another act of destruction will not bring world peace. Maybe acts of creation will. And I think one of the things that I've been so moved by is the creativity of the Ukrainian people in the face of such overt destruction. The maintenance of humor, the solidarity, the storytelling, the outreach, even the phone line that you all set up for the mothers and the wives and the family members of Russians, showing compassion to the enemy more so than their own governments show to them as they send their boys off to murder and to die in turn. It's not a question, Svitlana. I think it's an acknowledgement that even, as we face so much destructive power, and as your nation faces it directly head on, the power of creativity to help us move through that and try to build a better world in so many different dimensions. So on behalf of anyone else who doesn't have the opportunity to speak to you right now, thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and thank you for admitting that, because we are all humans and we have sense of humor. And even in the grimmest and darkest times and the most dear times, we are humans who wants some better world to be possible and happen. And that's why in the long term, we try to continue to fight to end of the age of fossil fuels that feed both the war and climate crisis. And Wall Street, especially, because I'm speaking to US audience right now, please just pay attention that Wall Street and the banks must go further and stop the ongoing funding of fossil fuels everywhere, because they are the bulwark of autocracy and the death of the natural world. So
I need you to say that again, Svitlana. You got to fossil fuels are the bulwarks of autocracy and
the death of the natural world.
And the death of the natural world. Put that on a bumper sticker and put it on your bicycle or electric vehicle. This is,
and it's actually a quote from our op-ed with Bill McKibben, who is here today with us. And yes, that's why it's probably worth of definitely capturing and putting on your bumper and just putting it somewhere in social media, of course. Yeah. And
you're doing my job for me, Svitlana. I want to, so the people at home, welcome my co-host now, Svitlana Romanko, who perfectly teed up our next guest, who's going to roll in just a moment, Bill McKibben. As Bill comes on screen, Svitlana, I'd love to refer to the climate crisis and this moment of possibility and opportunity. The two of you combined forces and formed a Voltron of intelligent argument for how we could use this moment to bring about peace and ensure the possibility of peace for our future. The Ukraine war is a decision point. Banks should stop funding the fossil fuel industry forever. You penned this in the Los Angeles Times. We are joined by Bill McKibben, who almost needs no introduction. I know Bill from 350.org, his 1989 book, The End of Nature, regarded as the first book for a general audience about climate change. Bill, welcome to our screen. Could you please share why you wrote an op-ed with Svitlana Romanko, an environmental lawyer and activist here from Ukraine?
Well, first of all, Baratunde, what a great pleasure to be here today and to be here with so many old friends who've been working so hard for so long. Melina and Mark and Svitlana and I have been colleagues for a long time. We wrote this piece for the LA Times because sometimes people don't quite make the connection back to the banks that are behind all this because it seems a little bit removed. But think about it for a little while. These are the same banks that have been funding Vladimir Putin and his war machine for decades now, long after it was entirely clear what he was about. Remember, this is not the first time that Putin has invaded Ukraine. He took Crimea in 2014. Did that slow them down? No. No more than it slowed them down from funding Exxon and Chevron and everybody else long after it became clear what was happening to the climate. We should be incredibly grateful to Svitlana. I mean, think of the courage to be able to sit in Ukraine right now and think about anything else other than the bombs falling around your head. But we have no choice but to think about everything at once because it's all happening at once. Right now, while we're pulling bodies out of Mariupol and the theater there in a scene of extraordinary horror, at the same day, the scientists told us last night that the temperature in the Antarctic yesterday was 70 degrees above normal, not 7 degrees above normal, not 20 degrees above normal, 70 degrees Fahrenheit above normal, the largest single deviation from normal that we've ever seen in a temperature record any place on Earth in our years of keeping those records. So the Earth is on fire for many reasons, but one cause, and that cause is the endless effort of the fossil fuel industry to keep its business model going long past the point when we have many other ways to power our lives. Think about what it would be like if we were running Europe on sun and wind right now. Vladimir Putin can't embargo the sun. He can't, put up some wall to keep the wind
listen,
from
Bill,
blowing.
I gotta pause you there. You said Vladimir Putin won't embargo the sun. I've seen The Simpsons, what Mr. Burns did to block the sun from the people of Springfield. I'm sure that was inspirational to a Bond villain like Vladimir Putin. So never underestimate his deviousness. But thank you for expanding the realm of possibility of how we can get cleaner, get greener, and be healthier together. Svitlana, while you're still here, I wanted to know what you want to see in terms of what's happening in Ukraine and this connection to climate, maybe what you already were seeing even before this terrible war was visited upon you.
Yeah, and first of all, of course, I would like and I wish to see this war ended, but not just ended, then we overcome it, but we win it as the Ukrainians and within the global solidarity that we are powerfully holding right now. And this is like 3D modeling of a climate crisis. Unfortunately, I never thought that we will pay such a price to see it, how the crisis may look like with the war in Ukraine, because the same thing, refugees and deaths and killings and invaders, the same thing is, and no access to basic human rights and to natural resources. This all will, we have to revisit until we won't shift ourselves towards a clean and renewable energy for the first and foremost, we need to move faster to protect people via secure, stable, and sovereign renewable energy, which will be distributed. No another monopoly we would like to see arising on this crash leftovers of Putin's not successful imperial. We have the solutions. We now have the willpower. We can and must move faster, because the sooner we replace oil, gas, and coal with cheap, safe, and renewable energy, the sooner we can all live in peace. That's simple. Let's just follow that. And for doing that, I would also like us to make a call on everyone who is watching, everyone who will be watching, and everyone who cares. Just please to stand in solidarity with Ukraine and take action in support of peace. Spread the word to your friends, your families, your leaders, and your bankers. It's time to end this era of blood oil and create a new era of clean energy and fossil fuel non-proliferation. For doing that, you can follow and sign a vast petition, Stand with Ukraine, which we are delivering to political leaders. You can go to website with Ukraine.org and sign as an organization to follow us and to help us. I mean, in Ukraine, Ukrainian climate activists who were united for this climate action and anti-war action, to stop Putin immediately, to end the war, and to enable fast and just transition to renewable energy.
Svitlana Romanko, thank you so much for holding all of that together. Thank you for standing so strongly. I want to repeat that website. It is avaz.org, avaz.org/stand with Ukraine. Please sign that and encourage us all to stop fueling Putin's fossil fuel war, as Svitlana so aptly put it. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to continuing to stand with you and appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Meanwhile, Bill, you stay right there. We're going to be joined very, very soon by Adam McKay. We're going to be joined by Meryl Streep. I want to keep talking with you, Bill, about other things that we can do to take this moment and accelerate and create a more regenerative path, a healthier path with the clean air and the clean water, and not so much monopolistic and destructive ways to power our lives. So, Bill, what else can we do?
Well, look, right now, I mean, all of our efforts, obviously, all of our thinking is focused on what's happening in Ukraine. And there are lots of ways for Americans to help make that go better. Vladimir Putin not only funded his army with the proceeds from oil and gas, that's 60% of his export earnings. So absent that, he's got nothing. And you can tell that. Look around your house and try to find something Russian to boycott. Unless you've got an old bottle of Stolichnaya in the back of the liquor cabinet, there's not much, because Russia doesn't do much except pump oil and gas, okay? So the other problem, though, is that they've been able to make Europe cower because they keep threatening to turn off the gas. As long as he has that power, he's going to be abusing it. The way to get off that power is not to drill more oil and gas and help whatever other despot we can find. You know, the Boris Johnson was off in Saudi Arabia yesterday on the same day that they executed 81 more people, beheaded 81 more people looking for more oil and gas. That's not the way to do this. The way to do this is to seize the moment to get onto clean energy. We can help in particular right now in Europe by building out all the kinds of things they need to make that happen. Maybe you're even I am not quite old enough to remember the years before World War II, but before we entered the war, before Pearl Harbor, we had something called Lend-Lease, where we were sending huge amounts of materiel and support to keep the British going in the face of Hitler. The thing that they need right now in Europe, in Ukraine, they need anti-tank weapons, but in Europe, they need air source heat pumps. They need insulation. They need the newest technology in order to heat people's homes that doesn't require gas to do it. We've started this little program, little campaign called Heat Pumps for Peace and Freedom, because as people at the Department of Energy and elsewhere are pointing out, we've got lots of spare capacity to manufacture this stuff in the States. And it's easy to install. We can get it over there. I mean, look, it's starting to get warmer now in Europe. And so for a few months, Putin's power is lessened a little bit. But even in a globally warmed world, it's going to get colder next October. And by then, we need to have made a significant dent in what it is that they're able to, leverage they're able to exert.
I've watched all these World War II movies, and you see Churchill, and you see U.S. leaders, and you see generals, and it's, we're going to fight them in all these different places. One of the places we can fight isn't just, land and sea and air, but with our energy sources. It feels like this Marshall Plan, like this green Marshall Plan. Is that part of the idea, kind of to use this moment to accelerate Europe's freedom from this kind of dependency? Yeah.
Right. Svitlana said something important. We're at a decision point. Our world obviously moves slowly. Our political system is designed to be dysfunctional at this point and to move with extraordinary molasses-like slowness. But every once in a while, events come along that cause us to have to change and change quickly. And we've seen in the last few weeks, people really rising up to support in ways we wouldn't have thought possible, even the people in Ukraine. And a big dimension of that is seizing this opportunity. I wrote a long piece that came out in the New Yorker yesterday, all about the fact that we're now, scientists have cut the cost of clean energy 90% in the last decade. So we're poised for this moment. If we wanted to seize it, there's not a technological or a financial obstacle in the way. What's in the way is inertia and toxic vested interest. But that's what we're talking about when we talk about banks and oil companies.
But what about, so everything you're saying, you're actually getting me legitimately excited and jazzed up. But you said there's nothing standing in our way except these things. I didn't hear you say Joe Manchin. What's everything good that I ever wanted for my country? There's a senator from West Virginia standing in the way because his vision of his
Joe Manchin is
people.
He's the absolute definition, Baratunde, of vested interest. Joe Manchin has taken more money from the fossil fuel industry than anyone else in Washington. Not an easy contest to win, okay? But he's won it. And man, the return on their investment has been unbelievable. For the few $100,000 that they stuffed in his pocket, they've been able to ward off hundreds of billions of dollars of investment in clean energy, the thing that they fear the most. They know that we now have better ways than oil and gas of doing the things we need to do in their lives. And they're terrified that we're going to do them at the speed that we could. That's our job as movements, is to push. And one of the places to push is on banks. That's why this work around CNB is so important. And it's why at Third Act, we're organizing older people like me, to pledge to take their money out of Citi and Chase and Wells Fargo and B of A by the end of the year if they haven't stopped funding the fossil fuel industry.
So
the banks are there. That's the money pipeline that drives the oil pipelines.
I was chuckling, not at you, but because I have too much happening on my screen, and we have our green room, and Mark Ruffalo's still around, and he held up an unflattering statement toward the senator from West Virginia that just got me right in the heart area. What can Joe Biden do to convince Manchin to go along with some plan to get heat pumps to Europeans? How is he actually how can the president move forward on this, given what we've seen?
In this particular case of heat pumps or insulation or whatever off to Europe, you don't have to wait for Joe Manchin. Biden has a law called the Defense Production Act passed in the Korean War era, and it's been used by everybody. Both Trump and Biden used it to speed up vaccine production. In truth, Biden also used it because during the California wildfires last year, we ran out of fire hose. So he used the Defense Production Act to get a factory in Oklahoma working overtime to build miles of new fire hose. In this case, he could use it to set up the contracts to build all these small machines and get them over to Europe, hopefully with a bunch of Americans to help install them who would come back knowing how to do that work here too, because it's not like we don't just need to do it in Europe. Yes, it's a very good idea to do it in Moldova, and it'd be a really good idea to do it in Minnesota. And they don't call it global warming for nothing,
Yo, with the snaps. All right, Bill's feisty today. I hope y'all are taking notes. Here's another hopefully tough one for you. We're in this midst of a war. It has global implications for the price of energy. Gas prices are going through the roof. We thought we could achieve energy independence by having our own, oil reserves, our own oil drilling, our own processing. And it turns out when Russia's supply is constricted through sanctions or other means, the price goes up everywhere. So I'm hearing folks say Americans don't want to pay more for fuel and gas, especially if it's poor Americans who have to drive to work and they're not choosing any of this environmental circumstance that they're in. Is the answer not to, in the short term, get more oil flowing, open up more of these permits, get the pipelines pumping, go cozy up to Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, anybody else we said we didn't like temporarily, in order to limit the economic pain here at home? What do you say?
No, you answered the question yourself, Baratunde. It's a global commodity. So it's the price is set globally. And as long as any of us are depending on it, it gives power to the people who produce it. Putin's making a fortune because the price of oil has gone up. Anything he's able to sell, he's selling at a huge inflated price, So the real task, for the short run, is, and I think Americans are completely willing to do this, to deal with the price of gasoline and to drive less and to figure out how to combine trips and to do all the kind. Everybody I talk to, I live in rural America, everybody I talk to is like, this is the least we can do. People are dying in the Ukraine, so I'm not going to whine about high gas prices. But in the very, looking longer than a few weeks at a time, what we clearly have to do is pass those kind of things like the Build Back Better bill that allow us to build out electric vehicles, in this case, to bikes, buses, and cars. Look, someone tell cable news the price of sunlight didn't change at all over the last month. The sun is delivering energy for just the same price it did in January, and it'll be delivering energy for just the same price, if anything, cheaper, because we're getting better at using it, next January. This is the way to go. We've got to go there, and now we have two good reasons: the destruction of the planet and the threat at this point, for the first time in our adult lives, of an actual nuclear war caused by a madman who's powered by oil and gas. So, if this isn't enough to make us move, then I think we're going to be, entitled to despair. But I think it is going to be enough. I think this is a moment, if we all push, that we may get somewhere.
Can you also briefly explain, this big oil windfall profits tax that's been proposed? Because sometimes these companies will jack up their prices in anticipation of changing market conditions, but just take the difference between their cost and what they're passing on to consumers as increased profit. What can we do about that?
So it's not like it got any more expensive for Exxon to go pump oil in the last month. It cost them the same to do it. They're just making a whole ton of money because Vladimir Putin started a war and the price of oil went up. That's the definition of a windfall profit. And we should be taking it away from them right now and returning it to people who are having to pay too much and you can tell that it's a windfall profit because these companies have been making record profits and engaging in record stock buybacks. They're just they're just greed balls. There's nothing more to it. And so good on Senator Whitehouse and Representative Khanna and others who are coming out with this windfall profit tax.
We've got Adam McKay joining us in a moment from Don't Look Up. But before he comes on screen, I want to ask you, what did you think of this movie? In particular, what have you been thinking about creating an IRL Just Look Up alliance?
Well, first of all, the movie was great, not just because it was a wonderful allegory about climate change, but because it was actually just like a funny movie. And a funny movie that wasn't all, jokes about bodily functions and stuff. My favorite moment of all was Tyler Perry interviewing the climate scientists and, asking them if there were actually aliens out on riding the asteroids and stuff. I mean, so I laughed a good deal. But I do think that the response to the movie demonstrates that there are millions upon millions upon millions of people who understand at some visceral level the moment that we're in, who share the fear and who want to do something about it, something beyond watch a great film. That's why things like this Just Look Up Alliance make a lot of sense. Start harnessing that energy and harnessing it not for changing your light bulb or whatever it is. We're past the point where you can make the math of climate change work one vegan dinner at a time, one Tesla at a time. The most important thing an individual can do is be less of an individual and join together with others in movements large enough to make basic political and economic change. And that's, I think, the work that Adam and others have got us started on here. And so it's a good idea to jump on the bus that they piloted into the middle of all this, the electric bus, and make real progress now fast together.
Make real progress now, fast and together. And get on that hashtag if you're watching this right now. Hashtag Just Look Up. Check it out on social media. Contribute to it. Put some of these hot quotes, some of this Bill McKibben classic shade. Put that out there on your channels. Bill, thank you so much